That's the end of the query part. Now we are going to quickly cover the update and delete operations with XML. An update and delete can be done in two ways. One is to use SQL update and delete, so it's just a normal update and delete in SQL, or you can use the XQuery transform expression. This is an example of SQL update. So this example again is just an update. As usual, you have to use the XML parse, but basically, let's say if your original XML document has this box number 48, or let's say, and now what you want to do is to change it to this number, then you do an update and you use set, and then you have to write the entire XML document here with the change. Okay, update. If you use the other method, which is XQuery, and using the transform clause, then you can just specify what you want to change. So in the previous example, for example, you would just have to specify the fax number. So you are going to do an update, you are going to set contact info, you have to put all the XML query information, and this is the namespace that has to be put in this case. Here is the transform clause, and you say copy new info to SCC. Basically, we are passing contact info as C. So C has the XML document, and then here we are copying the XML document to a variable new info. Then you will modify or insert a new email in this example. Last one into new info, customer info, then you will return news info. So basically you are adding one this tag here to the existing XML, and that's how you are updating it. You can define indices, their XML indices, and you have to specify the path. If you, for example, access the attribute constantly, then you can create an XML index just to the particular attribute. You will do it using the syntax create unique index, etc. Generate key using XML pattern, and then you put an XPath statement here. The same thing here, this one in this case would be for so name, so all the names, and then you have this one here. Text means you basically want to create an index on all the values, but that's not recommended because you are creating an index that is too big. An analogy would be to this: if you are working on a table and creating a relational index, it's like all the columns of the table, and that's not recommended. It would be too big. So when you do insert, update, and delete, you will also update the index, and that will cause issues. Finally, we are going to talk about the other XML support. In DB2 9.5, we also can do some sort of compression with XML. So we have base table inlining and compression of small XML documents. So if the XML documents is not big and it can fit different object, and in a table we have something like a pointer, but when the XML document is small in 9.5, you can also store the XML document table, and when it's stored like that, you can also apply compression that applies, or that row compression that works in DB2. Now compression does not work with DB2 Express C, but it works with other editions of DB2. Then you can also use, there is some support for the XSLT function, so you can transform your XML documents to provide a different format like HTML format. You can perform validation of your XML document. You can use XML schema. You can store your XML schemas in repository. You can use the XML validate function in your insert statement. So you go insert, etc., and you put XML validate parentheses, and you put all the values that you want to be validated against a given schema. XML schema that is in a XML schema repository that would be basically per row, and that would done per row. Then you can use a before trigger. You can define a trigger on the table, and that trigger can perform the validation. It will also have a check constraint using that is validated predicate to detect if a given column has been validated using XML validate. Then we also have in 9.5 a compatible XML schema evolution using the update XML schema command. What that means is that your schema can be changing constantly through time. Maybe a string had a given size, now it has changed, now it is a larger. So if you run this update XML schema, as long as it is not a completely different schema, then the schema can evolve and can be done using the update XML schema command. Then pure XML, as I said before, in 9.1 it was supported on Unicode database, but with 9.5 you can create them either Unicode or non-Unicode database. And XML, what we talk about so far is pure XML, but we also provide support using the decomposition method, which is a different method of manipulating your XML documents. We still support XML schema decomposition if you want to store XML not using pure XML but actually decomposing the XML into small